Welcome home. We are WNST, Tassel, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It's the holidays around here, and we're celebrating with not just the eggnog and the sauerkraut and kielbasa, and I got pumpkin pie ice cream. I got things going on, but we're going to be celebrating after the holidays at Fadley's. I have my Fadley's shirt on, my gear. That's the last time we're going to be at the old Lexington Market. They're moving into the new market, so on the 27th, come and get them. I asked John Martin at Wise Market today if I could give these out after Christmas. He said, yeah, they look Christmassy and holiday, but they're good till like March or April. And I'm like, okay. The gingerbread, I'll have some gingerbread cookies by then as well. Our friends at Window Nation, 866-90Nation. You buy two, you get two free. I'm inquiring about doors in 2024. Dear Santa, bring me some doors, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, where I still got to get my oil changed, but I'm doing that on the way to Costas this weekend before Christmas. I'm not doing a lot of radio this week. We're doing a lot of Crab Cake Tour greatest hits. We've had great shows the last couple of weeks up at Foreign Daughter with Michael Bronfine and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Gina Schock. Also had great conversation with Hex founder Drew Westerveld. Doing a lot of Ravens playing Christmas night, Ravens playing at home, New Year's in Miami, and flex games and all that stuff going on. But there's been so much money circulating out there in regard to sports. Tom Kelso joined us at Wise earlier in the week to discuss all the money with the Angelos family. And then last week, it was the press conference with Sashi Brown and my former friend, Brad Downs, talking about what their premium this and perimeter that, and the beer's colder inside the perimeter, and the hot dogs are tastier inside the perimeter. I was inside the perimeter for a long time. I was a PSL owner. I was the guy here pimping PSL, sold a couple thousand for the Modell family. I've known this young lady for a long time. I was a young man, and she was at the Daily Record for many years covering business, and we would rub elbows around baseball and sports and sometimes some rock and roll and civic issues. This is back when I just did sports around here. Liz Farmer she is, long story short, and the host of I want to get all of this right. What is how have you been? It's good to have you on.
Thanks, Nestor. It's really, really great to see you. It's good to be back, I suppose, even if virtually. And you have reminded me, it has been a long time.
Well,
It doesn't
I
feel
don't know
that
where
long.
people are from, but I look you up. I'm like, Frederick. I always like Baltimore. I know we're always in touch. Feels like you write about a lot of DC related things. I sort of thought you were in DC. I don't know. I know you have children and a whole like thing since this, but I saw this piece you wrote about Ted Leonsis, and even during a holiday weekend, I'm like, I got to get Liz on. We got to talk about this because
Yep.
it angered up my blood, and the whole look. I have no affiliation to DC, right? Like, I almost went to see Madonna on Monday and Tuesday night, took a pass because of the weather, and realized I'd be funding Ted if I bought beer there. Just for the people of DC, I'm a Capitals fan. I took umbrage when they moved out of Largo into DC and they changed their colors and they look like the St. Louis Blues. You probably came
hmm
along right around that point in my life. I feel like I've known you 20 years. I've been doing this 32 years now. The Capitals part of me, the fact that my dad was pissed at Abe Poland for taking the Bullets and moving them to DC, and then Susan O'Malley came and Bullets was bang bang, and we have to do
hmm
Wizards, and now they're just basically screwing everybody they've served for, 25 years, 30 years. It's just icky. It's icky, and I want you to talk about it because I thought your piece was amazing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I too had a very visceral reaction to this. I mean, I'm not from DC. I'm not even from Maryland. I grew up in California. Go Niners. I had to put that in there.
Hey, hey, hey! Wrong week for that.
I couldn't help myself. Um,
I wrote a
but
book about them losing, by the way, that I'm now
oh,
ashamed of because it, had to do with the Ravens' integrity. And 10 years later, I'm like, integrity? It's almost like a Christmas carol. But nonetheless, for the 49ers, integrity, they had Colin Kaepernick. So,
yeah. Well, we'll
happy
just move on
holidays.
from.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
well, we just mentioned all this crap. I mean, the fact that the Ravens exist is at the expense of Cleveland, which John Martin brought up with me the other day from the Maryland Lions. So, like, the ickiness of all of this, I have a Baltimore Colts belt buckle over here. I mean, teams
hmm
move, and
They do.
the more the money happens, Ted happens. But what Ted's doing is really icky.
I mean, it is because so when I first, I mean, I spent most of my, formative adult years in DC, and it was right around that time when the stadium, back then it was the MCI Center, it was brand new. And in my newsletter, I talked about how when I first got to DC, like you did not go to Chinatown except in large hordes of people, because it was still a dicey area. But you went because you knew that there were some exciting that things were it was becoming safer, and that was because of the stadium. And
You went to school
people,
there. You're a
yeah, I went
California
to
kid.
GW.
Okay, so you're a California kid that aspired to come to the East Coast to go to college. I mean, I'm just
Hmm.
trying to paint the picture of who you are because, like, I feel like I know you well, and I know you as a sports pro. I mean, I would run into you at games and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you were this young, beautiful gal that loves sports. It was like energetic about all of this stuff, and I'm like, I don't place people in that way because, like, to me, everybody's from East Baltimore. We all took the bus to Memorial Stadium, and
Right.
transplants come and sort of fall in love with our sports and
Yeah.
fall in with becoming a Ravens fan or becoming a national. You're a Nationals
Hmm.
fan, yeah?
Yep. Nationals fan.
I
Yep.
see you with the hat online. See, we're ambiently friends. That's why I sort of thought, like, Frederick, I thought you were in DC and you're taking on these pro DC causes, but they sold you on this
Oh,
malarkey, as the
yeah.
president
Oh,
would say.
man. I mean, not to get to but, like, when the Nationals came to DC, oh, so exciting. I mean, but
But
that's a whole
no, you're
other that's
allowed to.
another
But no,
episode.
no, no. But that is important because beyond the journalist in you,
Mm,
there is the person who bought into the Disney World myth or
yeah.
whatever, the Wizard of Oz, whatever it is.
Yeah, and people so when I left Baltimore to cover DC and I covered city council, I mean, everyone on city council, like Abe Poland was slash is still really a god to all of these everyone because he people looked at the arena as this wonderful, selfless, it wasn't completely selfless, obviously, but a gift of his to DC. And I think that that's part of the lore. Like that's how he talked about it up until he died. And people really viewed it as like him doing that, him making that investment with his own money. And yes, DC purchased some of the land that needed to be purchased to allow him to get the full footprint of the arena. They made some public improvements around that area. They expanded the metro station in that spot. Yes, there was public investment, but it was infrastructure. And Poland spent his own money to build this arena. And that was the genesis of everything that you saw in Chinatown and Gallery Place neighborhood for the following 2 decades. And I watched that. I was there for most of the time. And just watching that transformation, it was like it was ridiculously, it was amazing. I mean, there was the issue of people being pushed out and further east into the south of DC, but that neighborhood is completely transformed, and it is because it's the arena that started it. And so it's like a folk tale in DC's history. And so for Leonsis to come and yank that away and just completely, it seems like he's disregarding it for cash, for money, for more money, for more stuff. That's the thing that really, really hurts. And that's what I hear, other people who are also transplants who are DC sports fans are just really up in arms about.
Well, the abandonment part of it, because I go back to going to a lot of games at the Capitol Center, a lot of concerts at the Capitol Center,
Mhm.
and being a kid that grew up on the bus line, my father never drove, so like when the Bullets moved in the '70s, I was 5 years old. I watched them on Channel 20, and I love the Bullets, and I love
Mhm.
Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld. My dad was so pissed because they just took it off the bus line. Like my dad couldn't get there. And so they're the
Oh,
Capitol Bullets and they're the Washington Bullets and where's Largo and like and it just became not a Baltimore thing. But I worked in the media pretty early in my life. I was 15 years old and I love the Capitals, I love the Bullets, and I went and saw Kareem and Larry Bird and Dr. J, like all of that, and even covered it at the end. But then when they moved, it felt like it was a move to like not a Baltimore thing, and that never was a Baltimore thing. But home
yeah.
team sports, right? And the way the games were brought to us, they were our teams, and it wasn't for everybody. And I worked at the paper and I wrote it. I mean, I was the beat writer for the Caps for most of 8 years, from 84 to
Mhm.
about 92. And during that period of time, Rod Langway, Scott Stevens, all of that, there was definitely it was in the Baltimore Sun. The Baltimore papers covered them. The Baltimore nighttime led with the news. And it had always, well, it's Washington's, but it's ours. And they always wanted us. They always wanted our money. Like they would come up and play exhibition games. The Bullets played real games in the arena. I announced one of them. I got to be the guy when Spud Webb, I got to do the George Murison and the lights. I did that and like swear to God,
Oh, so
1994,
jealous.
95, very young in my career. I did that for real Bullets games in Baltimore. They changed the name, then they was going to play an exhibition game, and the Pelicans came and played, and they tried to charge people $300 for a shitty preseason game. And then Ted brought the Caps up for games, and they left the arena door open, and the ice got mushy. And Barry Trotz brought the Predators in. The Bruins played here. But they played a couple of games, and now the arena's kind of fixed. I mean, the CFG Bank Arena is beautiful. It's a great place to go and see a show. Please go. When Queen was here, the Eagles, Springsteen. I mean, we're getting things we never got before. But Ted and his son sold me for a decade on we're Baltimore's hockey team. We're in DC. It's close. You can take the train. Stuff people don't do. Train's not even open at midnight to get back to Baltimore. Like we're not Europe. We
Right.
drive. But I went down to that arena and I saw what you saw in 1998, which is when I was a music critic in the early 90s, anything at the 930 Club, anything at the Capitol Ballroom, man, they were dice. It was dicey. DC was dodgy. You got
Hmm.
lost. There was no GPS. There were circles. It
Yeah.
was designed to screw up the French, and like it was designed to be like Paris and screw up enemies, and it does. And I was an enemy and found myself in Anacostia and Northeast, Southeast. Like I would always be lost, like in DC, literally as a when I would go to the bayou, how the hell do we total Baltimore thing? Like when there were maps and gas stations and find the Wendy's and you might be able to get out on New York Avenue. So
That's hilarious.
so but I'm serious. I would go to concerts down there always and then hockey games and then fell
Mhm.
back in love with the Caps, right? Trotz, not even Trotz, Ovechkin, they started wearing
Yeah.
the old colors. They were good. I took bus trips down there 5, 6 times a year. I mean, like all of that. Gave the money, park, did busboys and poets, the whole deal. And I saw it, and I'm thinking for the people that bought in, and you wore that in your heart in your blog about dude, you sold me on lies. Like now you're just going to sell DC down the river after putting the district on your shirts. I mean,
Hmm.
my God, the district doesn't appeal to me. I'm from Baltimore. I'm a Towson. Like the basketball team's gone for me. Like I might as well be a Sixers fan or just pick a team, throw a dart, be a Spurs fan. I don't know, whatever I want to be.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
fair.
really an NBA, but the hockey team was still sort of mine. And I was there drinking out of the cup that night with Trotz in Las Vegas. It was sort of the last night where and I'll tell my story. I put down my cap sword with the Leonsis family at that moment, not just because of what they did to Trotz. They did the same thing to me and the kid being really unbelievably disrespectful to me, Zach Leonsis, after doing business with them, trying to sell
Mhm.
hockey tickets and doing stuff. But Ted came on my air, Liz. Ted came on my air 5 times and said, if we win the Stanley Cup, we're going to have a parade in Baltimore. We're going to bring the cup in on a boat for the Baltimore people. And there was a dude in my building that I lived in 20 years who was a season ticket holder since 1973. He was an original. They put him on the little bus in the parade of the 100 people that still had tickets all the years later. But like these are Baltimore people. It was Baltimore's cup too. He brought the cup to Baltimore under cloak and dagger to the Under Armour, took a picture with the bird and the Raven
Wow.
mascot, and the cup never came to ball. He lied to me and brought that crappy arena football up here. It was
Oh
awful.
my gosh, I remember that.
Just so
Oh,
Ted did a lot of really. He only showed up for press conferences to doff his cap. It was, good with me when I was helping him sell tickets. Like I don't, man. It's been a one-way track, and I don't. For him to do this to DC, to have you write about it, it grossed me out. And I
mhm.
thought to myself, who are these people? You know what I mean? The Ravens and the Angeloses and asking for $500 million, and I'm getting sour, and I don't want to be sour, and I don't want to be an old guy get off my lawn. But like the vibrancy of the Washington sports community and the buy-in of come back to the city, it's safe, it's good. Come see a concert, come see a game, come to the circus, bring your family. My God, what is he doing?
Yeah, it's and it comes at such a rough time for DC in particular. I don't know what if this is as big of an issue in Baltimore, but DC has a huge percentage of people who are still working from home most of the time. I mean, Metro is among the transit agencies, and is like the worst, one of the worst off transit agencies in the country in terms of recovering from the pandemic.
Doesn't have
There's
riders. I want to understand that because it's a new issue to me.
I worded that weird.
Okay.
So its ridership is still way down, probably more so than most other major cities transit
And that's a
ridership.
hell of a measurement that I hadn't heard or thought of. I've been in New York recently. I've been some places where I've been to Toronto recently, places where it's very vibrant. Baltimore,
Hmm.
I mean, come on now. I go downtown when Billy Joel's there, the Orioles are playing a play, whatever. I see people, but it's not like we need to do a redo. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any.
Yeah,
I sit here and talk about it every day. I'm Baltimore positive. Really, I am. I mean, really. I mean, driving the hard line as a journalist about all of this, I can't believe there's anybody who's not up in arms other than people in Virginia. And there's even people over there that aren't happy
mm,
about this. But like,
yeah,
and for Ted to hold a press conference and say, hold me accountable, and then walk off the stage without having questions, that's the height of when I need to say, I'm not even going down to Madonna, and I'm not even going to piss in your toilets. I'm not even going to
yeah,
walk in your building. I don't even want to give Madonna $40, and I wanted to give Madonna more than that. But I can't support it. You know what I mean? I like
yeah.
in a really ethical way. Like, this is somebody should really step up and talk about how wrong this is. But DC, like Oakland, like other challenge places, they don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to give to billionaires, right? Like, neither
They
does Baltimore,
don't.
but we just did. Yeah.
But I'm pulling it up now because it was like the day hours after I posted that blog post, there was there's let's see, here it is. The National Consumers League and the Sports Fan Coalition have united. I can't say I've heard of either of those groups before. um, but they're basically calling on the Alexandria City Council and the state to reject this whole thing. They're pointing to the amount of money that the state's going to spend, how the stated 400 million that Leonsis says he's going to invest is like kind of pennies compared to the entire cost of this development. So it's mostly a cost issue, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were other groups that form and start protesting this. But I'm not sure at the end of the day how much of a difference is that really going to make. This appears to be on its way to approval through in the state legislature.
I would say if there's a press conference, it feels to me like it's a done deal because he can't put his tail between his legs, right? I mean,
Exactly.
once you step out and do the heel turn, I mean, seriously, I mean, it's literally like an old wrestling heel turn, like literally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great analogy. So, I mean, I think this is going to happen. I mean, caveat, asterisk. But the tough thing is I imagine that the Caps and the Wiz are still going to say we're a DC sports team, and
Well, they're going to
that
point to the Jets and the Giants playing in New Jersey, I'm sure.
true. Which and all of that I don't like. I mean, a Niners fan now they're in Santa Clara. That's like
Oh
a
man, yeah.
45-minute drive without traffic from to San
I mean, you
Francisco.
can
But
speak to that as well. I mean, I love San Francisco. I love your homeland. I love that area. And I try to tell people it's not really San Jose and it's not really, but it's on a train line and you can get off a train and like
yeah,
walk in. So there's
yeah.
that. I mean, but who the hell
It's
wants to get on a train in
mm-mm,
California?
mm-mm.
But all of these things happen. The Raiders are gone, right? The Raiders could have gone down there and played and
Yes.
stayed in the
Right.
area and
Yep.
cut a deal and figured it out. That was never to be. And in the end, they always win. In the end, they
Hmm.
always get more money. Angelos earlier this week, parity clauses with Bisciotti, who's already got plans. And that's the thing that has driven me nuts, Liz. And this is like fan to fan, but journalist to journalist. I see them hold a press conference that I've been locked out of with a
Hmm.
president who has never taken a question in his life from a real media member. He's been here 2 years collecting his money, Sashi Brown, and either graduated or rejected from the Wiz and the monumental family tree down there in the Dick Cash chain, Silver Spring train. And for me, they put these plans out, and they're beautiful. It looks like the new train station in New York, right? Gold
Yeah.
this and bars of that and
Yeah.
raving calls and we're part of the flock and it's $500 million. And they say smarmy, I mean, like, guy got up at a press conference and said that the beer is colder and the hot dogs taste better
Are you
inside
kidding?
the perimeter. Inside the perimeter. Like, they're talking about having entertainment, and they're going to turn it into a sports bar, and it's going to be there 365, and there's going to be a special button to the top if you're a special button holder, and there's a Blackbird Club, and let's say all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, what's the idea? It's not colder beer. It's not we're going to bring a band in, because there's plenty of places to see bands. There's the CFG Bank Arena has done a very, like, what's the idea? What's the
Mm-hmm.
other than we're going to have premium this and premium that for our premium this and our
Yeah.
premium that. And Liz, here's the dirty secret, and nobody here will write about this. It's not going to get reported at BAL or Jay-Z because they're in partnership with these teams, MAR, any of the TV stations, Fox. I mean, the game was on Fox last week. The tickets were $3 last week. It was $60, or it was 60 degrees out. It was raining. They're 10-3, and tickets were $3 on the morning of the
What?
game, and there were 25,000 empty seats for the Ravens game last week. And nobody is
Wow.
pointing this out, that it is not a premium ticket anymore. It is not a hard ticket. Now, AFC Championship game, playoff game, okay. I mean, they're going to
Yeah.
sell out, but they brag about their sellouts. And the only game this year that was a tough ticket was the Lions game, because the Lions fans bought 15,000 of the tickets. Like, and so they're doing all of this, and it's like, Ted, we're going to move the team to where, ostensibly more of our affluent Caucasian fans from the suburbs can get to it, and they're going to pay
Hmm.
$100 to park, and they're going to do all of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody wants to see your basketball team. You know what I mean? Like, it's been here the whole. It's like Angelos. Like, if the team stinks, don't blame it on transportation, crime, race, pricing,
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. But like, build your brand. The Orioles won 101 games. Tickets were $6 the night that they clinched to get in, and they could only sell 28,000 of them.
Wow.
I mean, that's really the,
Yeah.
part of this is like all this TV money's drying up, and they're trying to figure out where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And like, when you and I were doing this 20 years ago, it was club level, television club level, premium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is their idea? You know what I mean? Like, that's really like, what is Ted going to build over there? Can you tell our audience where we're going to come see Bon Jovi when he's 70?
Okay. And he probably will look exactly the same. Um, yeah, there's going to be a performing arts center, television studio. They are consolidating the Monumental Sports' headquarters, the team practice facilities, which are now they're in separate locations. That's all going to be in one spot. And then elsewhere outside of that complex, it's like the typical mixed use retail type of
The
thing,
Atlanta
but
Battery that John Angelos,
exactly.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. And this is like to what you were talking about too. I mean, back when you and I were both in Baltimore, I mean, it was the Jumbotrons, it was the club suites, it was still like this contained
Selling
experience within the
signs on the
stadium.
wall was revelational for the Angelos family.
Yes, yeah. And that's what it was about, but now it's just the footprint is expanding. Now they want to influence all the real estate around their stadiums and get a piece of that too, if not all of it, which is what they did in Atlanta with the Braves own all the land around Truist Park, and they're the ones that have paid for the development, and so they're reaping all those benefits. And meanwhile, the team in the county split the cost of the stadium. So I don't even know why the county I do know why the county, put up their money because they want that. They want that. But you have this theme of teams want more than just what's inside the arena or the stadium. But now also they don't have enough space in their minds to do that in cities. So you have the Braves moving out of Atlanta, and the Caps and the Wizards now leaving DC. And so it's just it's alarming. I mean, and with football teams too, they're doing the same thing. And so and
These
you have all
stadia
this.
were the linchpins to bring communities together. I mean, when I talked to Tom
Yeah.
Kelso earlier this week from the Maryland Stadium Authority about all this money Angelos is getting, this stadium this was our gateway arch. This is what we
Yeah.
invested in the 80s to keep the baseball team after losing the football team and to move the baseball team downtown where it would benefit Phillips, the Inner Harbor, the Sheraton, the Hyatt, the aquarium. It was creating a Disney World 81 nights a year. And Angelos bought the keys to it a year and a half into it and effed it all up very, very quickly. And the football team came and changed the trajectory of sports in our city, as you know it and see it. But you probably arrived right when the Ravens arrived, and the Ravens were like in purple Barney suits, right? Like they were
Yeah.
sort of a joke, and the Redskins were everything, right? Like literally,
Yeah,
right?
that changed real quick though.
Well,
I mean,
hey man, new ownership can either fix the bar or wreck it, right? Liz Farmer is here.
yes.
Liz, tell everybody what you do and who you are, because I want to give you a chance. Because I mean, you're so smart about all of this, and you've lived it, and you've written about it at a way higher level than me. But on the sports side, I'm pretty good on this stuff, and I'm narrow. But man, you focus on like policy as you're a
Yeah.
real watchdog. You're. I
Yeah.
want you on the wall. I need you on the wall. You know?
Yeah, so I cover government fiscal policies. So basically how our government spend our taxpayer dollars. I have a weekly newsletter on Substack called Long Story Short, and I co-host the Public Money Pod, which you can find on all of the streaming platforms.
She's wonky, right? That fair?
Proud of
All right,
it.
there you go. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, 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 yeah. So on the wonky side of this, and on how DC gets left behind, with all the conjecture about Angelos moving to Nashville, I'm like Billy Joel. I didn't start that fire. You know what I mean? Like his brother
Mm.
alleged it, right? In court paperwork last year. But the feasibility of it, and it sounds good, it sounds sexy, but then I pulled back with some legislators, real people who do this for a living, and I got some inside, you know, pool on what happened in Tennessee. And between the state and Cumberland County and the city of Nashville bonding $800 million, show me how the city of Baltimore bond $800 million for anything.
Uh-uh.
And how all of this happened because Nashville's becoming a super city, a hub, the Athens of the South, all that crap. But more than that, the football team's going to reap the benefit of the fact that Taylor Swift's going to do a residency in that stadium and they're going to get Final Fours and Super Bowls. That's the pitch. And it's the South. So there's all sorts of roadie, the billion things they can do in a dome in Nashville that takes $2 billion to build,
Mm.
that Nashville was willing to go in on that. How would Nashville ever find 600 million more to give to John Angelos, which wouldn't buy him a parking garage in Nashville, let alone a baseball stadium, right? So the thought that he was ever leaving, or that his partners are ever going to let him leave, or that daddy's taking a nap and the day after that mom owns the team and doesn't want any part of it, and he and his brother 80. I mean, we can go all day on Leonsis and whatever crap he and his kid are pulling down there, but all of these are their own little steamers of dog manure in their own way in regard to what you do for a living, which is Wonkavate. Is this making sense for a community? And we're all
Mhm.
pitching in on what? And we're paying billionaires to build premium clubs and sell colder beer and better hot dog. I mean, like, it really is bourgeois of the highest magnitude. And we're two kids who love sports.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's my husband and I were talking about this weekend. Like, people love sports because they want that they feel connection to the team. They want to feel that connection back. I mean, if you strip everything away that owners and television has added on to sports, that's still what it's about. And because that proof is in, when teams win, people go watch games. I mean, that's what it's about. You can throw all this other stuff on, but and maybe you'll get the casual fans, but I mean, the point is to do well and to win games and to have your fans be proud of you and vice versa. And
And
we
to
are
serve the
losing that
community.
connection
It's
and to
serving the
serve the
community.
community.
I mean, like, that's where
No,
I
you're
would,
right. You're right.
no, I mean, that's where it all started for me, going on the radio and being a kid that loves sports and lockers. People would always say, who are the nice guys? Who are the good people?
Hmm.
And I think all these years later, it's pretty obvious to see Ken Singleton was a good man, that Al Bunbury's a good man, that Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray were good people, that Rick Dempsey's a
Hmm.
good man. You know what I mean? That these kids, I was a kid admiring those players, and we talk about Rod Langway and all those caps, that Wes Unseld lived a life, that all of us should want to live as community. Brooks Robinson. I mean, the day
Oh
that
yeah.
Brooks
Yeah.
Robinson died here, It's the
Oh,
darkest day of the year of 20
yeah.
of this year in review that we lost Brooks. Oh, I'm gonna wind up crying talking about it, but like that's how important it was. That's what
Hmm.
it meant. And you know what it means that the Ravens win the Super Bowl 6 weeks from now? That Odell Beckham will go get 20 million from the Packers, and and I hope Lamar does stuff here that Ray talked about doing, and John does, and Ed tries to do, and these heroes of the modern era, and Cal, and but
Yeah.
and I was served that ish on a stick all of my life, and I'm 55 now, and I've seen how these teams and these owners behave. I've had
Hmm.
front row, not a front row seat. I've had an inside the arena seat with all of them, and a seat at their supper table, and it's gross. Leonsis, gross. Bisciotti, gross. Angelos, it beyond. I mean, I don't even know what to say, but and Snyder, yeah, right, right. I'd have no affiliation with that franchise, but half of our audience does, and 90% of your audience, right? Literally, right? Like,
Yeah.
on top of all of this is Lerner can't get rid of the team. Masson's
Mm.
tied up and encumbered, which you and I have been covering for 2 decades. Angelos has still never paid them the bill, and Major League Baseball can't make him pay the bill. The team can't be sold. Ted's going to buy the baseball team, right? Like, literally, that's his play with his television thing over in Virginia.
Mm. Hmm.
I mean, the pieces of this are unbelievable. And for Washington sports fans to swallow this after dealing with Snyder for 3 decades, and what are they going to, what's their play?
Oh, so I think this puts real pressure on the mayor to so they're negotiating, obviously. They want to bring the Washington football team back into DC where it should be. But this move by Leonsis puts real pressure on that to happen because without that, and that I mean, it would just be I can't even think about what that would be like. And I do imagine that even though the timelines were kind of happening at the same time, that this is going to play in somehow to the negotiations for. I know the Orioles they've signed a lease, but there's still a lot of issues to be worked out in terms of the real estate agreement that hasn't been ironed out. And so just this is going to put a kind of like a tinge on all the stuff that's still pending.
The real fact of the wonky part of the DC part of taxation without representation,
Hmm.
and the fact that there's just there ain't no money there. I mean, right, to your point, what Abe Poland did was truly magnanimous in that
Hmm.
era to do that
Yes.
in the way where Modell was fighting for his life because he owned the stadium, was a piece of crap in Cleveland and went broke. And I'll get John Morgan on. He wrote books about that, 25 years ago as well. But here we are paying the bill. It's the next time, and the Ravens are getting X, and their ownership's getting basically a third of a new stadium, $500 million bonded out over 15 years to keep
Hmm.
literally money to keep the team here, to build stuff that enriches them and only them in their own way. And we're all okay with this, I guess, until we're not. And the guy in Missouri just takes the team away, or the guy in DC just says we're going across the river because y'all are too broke. Neighborhood ain't good anymore. Yeah, I'm done.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I just what's going to happen with Ted in this? I mean, he's already got two sort of damaged franchises on the ice, on the court. The district part of this, who his fan base is, who he's appealing to, who these companies are that are buying these $800 courtside seats for nothing, and except when
Yeah.
LeBron's in or Steph Curry's shooting or whatever. I the funding of this from a fan standpoint in DC was never all that much talked about because it flooded the Orioles with money that
Hmm.
in 1992, when Camden Yards came on, all of those skyboxes in Camden Yards were owned by district money and DC money and home team sports and selling companies and companies adjacent to government an opportunity for George Bush or Bill Clinton or the other George Bush or whoever's in office to throw out a first pitch and like all of that stuff. Baltimore really reaped the rewards of that money. And when it got pulled away in 2005, I mean, we're over here freezing, and Baltimore
Mm.
has its own problems, but DC, from your wonky part of like how big the government is for something that isn't even a state to be giving this sort of money away, right? Like DC's its own thing to walk
DC
away from.
That's true, but DC is no what do they have, like a $10 billion budget, I want to say, or something. They got money. And they are actually
More than
like the
Rhode
city
Island or
itself.
like stuff like that, probably, right? Like literally.
Potentially. But so they, because they are, as they like to say, a city, a county, and a state. So if you smush all those governments together, that's the kind of taxing power it has. And so, all the taxes you can think of, DC can do. And so financially, the city's fine, but it's just a matter of, is it going to continue to be fine because of what's going on with the work from home and all that stuff and the transition and so like that's a question. But then how much does the city have to spend to not lose another professional sports team, or to and I'm thinking of the Nats, or to get the football team back into DC? I mean, those are the big questions, and it can afford it, but should it is a different question.
I haven't read a whole lot on this. Liz Farmer's one of the things I've read. She is our guest. Please go follow her pod, and I'll let her give all the details on all the ats and findings out on social media. But I'm fascinated at the machination. I have talked for 30 years with John Moog and Art Modell about, airplane rides and tarmacs and signing over contracts and deals and hush agreements and keeping it out of the media and like all of that. How did Ted Leonsis fall in with the Virginia government to the point where that he sold off DC? That like I'm blown away at that part of it. And has it been fully reported or where? Because
Mm-mm.
Ted walked off the stage without taking questions. I mean, these things don't happen in a vacuum. This was very plotted, and I'm
Yeah.
sure pretty sordid, really. When the truth comes out about how the Capitals and the Wizards would walk out of their own building to leave, a struggling downtown with the district on.
Hmm.
Like I don't know how he's going to pitch up this turd. I mean, maybe he should go hire Chad Steele as a PR guy. Like how are you going to polish this?
I do not know, but it's going to be entertaining and sad to watch him try and do that, because I mean, I have yet to hear anyone who's excited about this. Maybe I'm sure there are people are, they're just being really quiet because they don't want to be, trampled. But it's, yeah, I would be very interested to hear the backstory of how these conversations started and when they started, because you heard rumors in a couple of days before, but the whole thing was still very much kept under the wraps, and it was a big surprise.
Well, it's different if you're desperate, right? I mean, you
Mm,
know what I mean? And the perception of Ted Leonsis is he's not desperate at all.
yeah.
And the perception I have from up here, and I haven't talked to him since the last time I talked to Ted Leonsis was 5 minutes before Alex Ovechkin came and took the cup from the table I was sitting at with Barry Trotz at 3:30 in the morning, when Ovechkin took the cup from next to me in sandals and walked out the side door. And 8 minutes later, he was in the MGM with Tiesto putting the thing
Yeah.
up, and I was at
Oh,
the table
baby.
with Trotz showing it to him on Twitter, like literally. So that's the last time. So whenever that was, 5.5 years ago, whenever they won the cup in 18,
Yep.
I guess, right? So
Yep.
whenever that was, that's the last conversation. Actually, I saw Ted at the parade. I have a picture. I saw Ted at the parade, and Barry knew he was gone, and like it was. Oh man, that was uncomfortable. So I did see Ted at the parade, but I haven't talked to him since then. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how's he going to wrangle back from this or into this or out of this to just destroy one place and play 4 miles away and think that like he's going to then buy the Nationals and then like I mean, he's become a villain in this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
his aspirations are far. I mean, all of this DMV, and we're one super city from Richmond to Bel Air. He gave me all of that bouja when he was telling me we should be Capitals fans because we're from Baltimore, and he's going to bring the cup here if they ever won the cup after 50
Mm,
years.
hmm.
So, like, I've already been bamboozled and steamrolled and like all of that by him. I just never thought he would have this in him to leave his own building and to not find a bigger, better way to be big man on campus in Chinatown and figure out a way to make where he is better. The grass is always greener
Yeah.
on the other side. It's shameful. I don't have a stake. It's just shameful. And I,
Hmm.
I I keep thinking like, what is his outcome? Because his bigger picture is television. He doesn't even know what it is, and his kid doesn't either. We're going to digital stream minor league AFL games, and we're going to pay $8 a subscription. Here, Nest, go sell it.
Yep.
So I keep thinking to myself, like, his bigger picture isn't to like slink off to Inglewood and hide, or slink
Mm-hmm.
off to, City X and leave behind whatever. This is dirtier than that for the DC vested people who pay for it. And I think it's even weirder because he clearly wants to own the baseball team too.
Yeah.
And the television part of all of his kingdom of programming. That's what they think they're in the programming business more than anything else. From my personal time with them, they think they're in the programming business.
Yeah, and it's just these sports media entertainment conglomerate companies, and the teams are a tiny little, not tiny, but the teams are a slice of this whole mega entertainment plan that they have, that is now including real estate developments and those profits. And so you know what I was thinking too, is as you were talking, is Leonce is taking the Capitals and the Wizards. I mean, just far enough away that you can still see them enjoying themselves. I mean, it's like watching your ex date your best friend or something. You're still there, you're still close enough, but you don't get that. And so I mean, them moving to Virginia is just it's I don't know. I would ask Baltimoreans how it felt after the Colts left. What do they think? Should I even mention Mr. Ursay's name
Well,
on
I
air?
mean,
I mean,
it's been said, it's been spoken here before, and I've made peace with that years ago when the Super Bowl was in Indianapolis. They had such a beautiful thing out there. I saw it differently there, that what it did for that community. It put that community
mhm,
on the map, and shame on Baltimore for leaving the team, but he was a old drunk awful guy, and we wound up getting a prettier girlfriend and a better team and a better second wife and a better life, and like one Super Bowls, might win another one in 6 weeks. So I'm it doesn't make it wrong, any less wrong, but it really begat all the broken hearts of all the Hartford Whaler fans. And,
mhm, mhm.
I'm a
Oh,
Houston
yeah.
Oiler guy. I mean, the fact that the Oilers wore that gear the other day while they were playing Houston was just beyond shameful. And again,
Mm,
I've mentioned all of these owners, shameful, shame. It's become a billionaire, lose touch, and do things that your legacy, your better angels would say your legacy would mean more. And Abe Poland was a man of that generation. Broke my dad's heart, but never was coy about it. I mean, had designs that like the team can't thrive here, and he was right. And moved the team down there, and they went to championships in the '70s and won the NBA title with Wes and the Big E. Still, I'm still take pride in that. My dad's been dead 30 years. He's still pissed at me for ever loving that team for exactly what you said. I was a Baltimore Bullets fan. They moved that team 30 miles down the Beltway. My dad worked at the Point. My dad loved the Bullets. Like, took the
mm.
bus, went to games, all of that. Nobody went to those games, by the way. Like, when you go back and look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the hooks, there's nobody watching him play as a Milwaukee
Wow.
Buck in 1971. Like, the city after the riots and stuff. I mean, you learn
Yeah.
stuff when you get older, about how it was blown apart. And I shared a picture recently, Liz. You can see it on my LinkedIn or wherever to go back. It's an aerial shot southbound from what looks like the bank tower in downtown Baltimore on Light Street of the harbor nuked out. Like, just literally just nothing but dirt. Like, all the port stuff, the rats, all that stuff had been moved. It's like 1975, 76. Empty shot of everything that would become the aquarium, the science center, Harbor Place, the Hyatt. The McCormick building was still there. The building I lived in wasn't there. For this view wasn't there. And I think about vision, right? And Ted thinks he's a visionary. Ted thinks he's going to build this across the street from a Target. But does he really think he's does he really a visionary, or is he a pirate? You know what I mean?
Ah,
Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I'm trying to
I
figure
lean to
out.
the latter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's about
yeah.
money. It's about money. It's about making more money. I mean, really, that's what it is. And I was thinking, I mean, not
You're a
to
visionary.
blame the
You're in the middle of
victims, but
DC. You're in Chinatown. Vision it there. You
right.
know what I mean? If you're a visionary, fix where you are. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Because there's a lot of for lease signs down there now than there were, and much more than there were about 4 or 5 years ago. And so, I mean,
Put your betting emporium in there.
yes, exactly.
All right. I mean, I hate to be such a jerk because I mean, like, but it's just awful. And when we talk about it, and it's different. Did Ovechkin score a couple last night, or let's love him
Mm,
up, or whoever the latest flavor of the Lamar, of the Ray, of the Brooks, of the whatever, whoever these players are, they come and go. But there's a part of the community, part of the obligation of the to whom much is given, much is expected. But man, we
yeah.
don't demand it. And what did you make of the Angelos thing? I really, I haven't talked to you about that at all because you're out in Frederick. What do you know about Baltimore and Frederick? But like,
Ah,
you loved Baltimore. I saw you more in that stadium than anywhere else. Just
yeah.
all of this sort of mess, and the Ravens putting out this gold-plated video last week of what they're doing with our money.
Oh, geez.
Your money
You
too. You're
know,
in Frederick.
this is true. Yeah,
Yeah,
I live in
your money
Maryland.
too.
I pay
Yeah,
Maryland taxes.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's really tough to say because I think that Maryland Stadium Authority owning those properties has then locked itself into, whether it said it or not back in the 90s, committing to reinvest in those properties at the behest of the team owners. And because this that story's played out over and over in other cities. We're now in the big stadium renovation boom, and governments are ponying up more cash to do that. Otherwise, team owners say they're going to leave. And so this is just, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is kind of par for the course. What Maryland did, allotting, and by the way, this lease now that the Orioles have signed, they get their $600 million in improvements because there's a lease signed. So now those bonds can be sold. Uh, it's Maryland could have done worse, and they don't want those teams to leave. And so I think they're kind of just stuck between those two. You have to give just enough that it's palatable to everyone. And it's just a tough place to be. But that's the business you get into when you build your own sports stadium. And then the flip side is, well, you can have the team owner own the entire stadium and then leave your city. So it's
I
really
mean,
a
it's
tough place to
amazing,
be.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and Liz Farmer is here. Tell everybody about your podcast and tell everybody about being the wonky person that you are. I want to reset a little bit here because I do want to wrap up, but I just have one more point for you.
Yeah, sure. So I co-host the Public Money Pod with Justin Marlowe. It is produced by the University of Chicago's Harris School of Public Policy. I also write the newsletter Long Story Short. I guarantee you won't spend more than a few minutes reading it, but you will learn something. And I talk about government, taxes, policy, all that good stuff. And it's on. You can find me on Substack.
She also talks about her love of DC sports and her broken heart about all of this, which is what led
Yeah.
her into this mess on a holiday week. I guess the last part of this is there were no whispers of this, no anything. What now happens? Like what's Ted waiting for to get a papal blessing on this for them to put a shovel in the dirt and say sayonara other than hold me accountable and walking off the days? Like
Mm.
what's really these organizations, fan organizations that are pissed and whatever, and DC people that are angry, what's the next step? Because I've wondered that. I'm going to ask that with Angelos. Is like, I sort of know a year from now they're going to put out a bunch of plans of what they're doing with our money and gold-plated bathrooms, and this time next year they'll have that.
Yes.
And like, I got that, but this is different because this is like a piece of land that exists. People know where it is, all
Hmm.
of that, and the part of him still trying to sell the product he has, which was Madonna for me on Monday and Tuesday this week.
Yeah. So the government's city of Alexandria has to approve the plans, the issuance of the 1.5 billion in bonds that the state of Virginia is
1.5 billion. So
billion.
that's
Yeah,
three and a hundred. I'm just doing the quick. I'm done,
it's a
Doc.
lot of money.
300 million more than we gave both of our teams to stay here. Okay.
Yep, you nailed it. Yeah. So that's the state of Virginia is going to spend all that money on the rest of the development, but that has to be approved as well. So basically, red tape stuff. But I again, I would be surprised if that stuff didn't ultimately get approved. There's probably going to be some delays, but those are the next things.
The thing I heard as an insider when it's like a Tom Petty song, The Insider. I got burned by the fire. So they were upset about the roof of the MCI Center, Capital One, whatever, Verizon, whoever's
Mhm.
paying him this week.
The phone
Um,
booth.
yeah, the phone booth. Thank you. The roof of it was different and not put together in a way that was going to be able to hang trussings and do things that they wanted to do. And I remembered, I mean, we're going back 8, 10 years here, maybe
Mhm.
even a little longer. That was a concern for them as the lighting changed in hockey rinks and
Oh,
certain
that's
buildings had
yeah.
trussing to do all of this laser show that they want to do with hockey games and putting on with the wristbands and all the stuff Taylor Swift would want to do in an arena. She'll never play an arena again. There's not enough dough in there. But that stuff that the roof was a problem. Is the building falling apart because they didn't keep the toilet? To your point, like when you own the building, you know how expensive it is to have your own building. When you don't have your building, the MSA says, "Do you know how expensive it is?" I had Tom Kelso once saying,
Yes.
"We maintained Camden Yards for 30 years. Bisciotti put $250 million into the football stadium, so kudos to him." I always say
Mhm.
that. I don't know what Ted put into the building down there. And again, I didn't go to the Madonna concert on Tuesday, although I considered it. But I haven't. Oh, Liz, I haven't been in that
Mm.
building. Oh man, like I'm thinking it was a concert, but I don't know which one, and it's been plaguey. I mean, it's been three, four,
Yeah.
five. It's been a long time since I've been in that building. So I don't. I mean, is the building a whole?
It's been a couple of years since I've been in there, but
It was
last time I
always
was
an
there, it was
uncomfortable
for a
building,
Wizards
by the way. It
game.
was always a terrible
Yeah.
building. Just there was never enough leg span. I was always blown
Oh,
away
the
by
seats.
I bruised
Yeah.
myself dancing at a U2 show, and it took 6 months for the bruise. I mean, seriously, on the cups, I swear to God. And I'm like, this place sucks. And I saw
Yeah.
U2 in a dozen arenas, and I'm like, they're not all this awful, man. And I'm 150 pounds, I mean, so I
Yeah.
can say that
Yeah.
it wasn't a comfortable building, but leaving it, like
Yeah.
what's wrong with it? I guess would be my question.
I mean, it's no worse than any other arena of its age that I've been in. I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree with you about the seats, but it's standard city arena. I mean, maybe I have low expectations of these things, but I'm there to watch the game and eat crap like terrible foods. I mean, I mean, that's what I'm there for. I'm not there to get my toes painted or any of that other stuff.
Been following any of the national sale story?
No, not closely anyway, so I
Yeah,
couldn't
it's
speak
just
to any of
just
that.
how linked to Angelos and I mean, Major League Baseball has been playing patsy with these people for 2 decades, right? Like it's just a mess. The whole Baltimore DC thing is, nobody outside would ever understand how stretch all this is with the football teams and who likes the baseball teams and how crappy all the owners have been at various points. Liz Farmer's out there doing the good work. She's on the wall. She's watching your money, my money, to make sure bad guys aren't taking. There's always bad guys taking it, I guess, right? Somebody would
Always.
say that. So, thank you for your friendship over the years. It's fun to watch you. So, Frederick, I love Frederick. I did the crab cake tour. You're like in Thurmont out that way. Like,
Yeah, yeah, north
I've
of
been
Frederick.
everywhere in the state doing the crab cake tour. And
Uh-huh.
I really fell in love with Frederick, like downtown. Like, I'm like, hey, I
Oh,
want to come out
yeah.
here and get dinner and hang out, and see a show, and go to the theater and
Yeah.
have a beer outside. Frederick's awesome, and nobody could have ever told me that unless I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah, it's great. The canal, the restaurants, people now are complaining that it's all getting too built out, and I live far enough outside of Frederick that we're surrounded by, like, watershed and stuff, so none of that stuff is ever gonna touch us, so we just get to enjoy having that city somewhat close by.
All right. Well, take care of yourself. And thanks for coming on and being super smart and super insightful and allowing me to vent about my crap because, like, I just seeing people gang up on Ted, and I'm thinking to myself, why did he want this? Like,
Mm,
why did he want to wear it? Because he didn't need to do it. I guess that was, and I think we all are
yeah.
in agreement with that, right? This was not necessary, right?
No, yeah, no, no, no,
Like
I
the
mean,
A's
DC
leaving
was
the
gonna give
Oakland
him money.
Coliseum is pretty necessary, right?
Yeah. Speaking of falling down stadiums, I mean, that's
I keep forgetting you're
yeah,
from the Bay
yeah.
Area. That's on our next segment, on our next podcast. Liz and I will talk about the history of Bay Area sports and the demons of Al Davis and Mount Davis and
Oh,
the
Al
winds of
Davis.
Candlestick Park and Kezar. And all right, Liz, appreciate you. Thanks for coming. Happy holidays to you. I hope you have a
Happy
great
holidays
holiday.
to you. Yeah, it's great
Eat
to
some
see you, Nestor.
pie.
This was
Eat
fun.
something good. Eat something you
I
shouldn't eat.
will. You
All right,
too. You
that's
too.
fair. And
Load up.
don't drink too much on New Year's Eve. Liz Farmer is here. She's long story short. Make sure you go follow her out and her podcast as well. You can find her anywhere. Good people sit on walls and make sure that the government's doing what they're supposed to do. I tell you one thing we're doing right now. Maryland Lotteries is sponsored by the government, and this is part of how these stadia and stadiums get funded. We talked to John Martin, executive director, on the Up and Up about that. The O Snaps they're my favorite because they smell like gingerbread. So I like these. We'll be giving these away at Fadley's. I have my Fadley shirt on. Uh, our final crab cake in the hallowed area of the old Fadley's is going to happen on Wednesday morning, the 27th after Christmas. A lot of guests, a lot of friends coming down. I have put together the biggest, coolest, most awesome promotion I've ever put together for February and Radio Row Week. I'm going to be talking about that as a New Year's here. Our friends at Window Nation remind you, 866-90Nation. It's cold out. It's warm in. I'm saving dough because I got windows a year and a half ago, working on some doors. Our friends at Window Nation, as well as Jiffy Lube, Multi-Care, putting the Crab Cake Tour on the road so we can have winners, and more winners. We'll see if the Ravens are winners. Liz Farmer will be on the other side of that fence wearing some Joe Montana throwback or some John Brody throwback from the old days. I always liked the Niners. Always liked Bill Walsh. I'm not
Oh,
49er,
yeah.
but I will be at 8 o'clock on Christmas night. Don't curdle my eggnog, for crying out loud. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking about important stuff. Baltimore positive. Stay with us.